How does stress contribute to mistyping when we're looking for our Enneagram type? Whether that's to retype or considering our type for the first time. And let's be honest, life is stressful, whether it's work or family or our community or our health or just, the planet. There's a lot of things to worry about and there's a lot of pressure to do or to be certain things. Now, our personality pattern or our Enneagram type has a number of strategies built in to help it cope with stress, to help us cope with stress. Part of what it's designed to do, but sometimes our primary operating pattern, our core motivation, our core drive isn't enough. Sometimes we need extra help. Now, that is what the wings and the arrows are for. Under stress, we can reach out for those extra resources to help us get through that time. And depending on the type of stress we're experiencing, sometimes those extra resources are temporary and sometimes they become a way of living. And that was my experience. After a really stressful childhood, I developed a number of chronic illnesses. They came on slowly at first until I could really no longer deny just how bad it was. And I had to make some life-changing decisions on how I was going to live. And that included choosing to live a quieter life in New Zealand, where I could focus on helping my body heal. And while the 7 part of me was frustrated that I didn't know anyone and there weren't many theaters to go to and cafes and there was just less things I could do, another part of me was relieved to have all this time for inner exploration and quiet and to just get comfortable with boredom. And living at point 5 was a really important part of my healing journey. But it also meant that when I did my first Enneagram test, I answered the questions from the perspective of how I was living at that time and what my life looked like. And so when the test popped out this answer of telling me I was a 5, it wasn't wrong, but it wasn't right either. And not only does stress push us into our arrows or wings to help us cope, they can also make us harder to observe ourselves. The more stress we're under, the more tunnel vision we get, the more we hunker down and just focus on getting through, on coping with the situation. It's when we have that chance to relax, to feel safe and to rest that our tunnel vision can open back up and we can start to see more, observe our patterns, our behaviors with more of an observer's eye rather than just being caught up in them. And I think this is one of the reasons that I think it's okay to be mistyped, at least for a while. I didn't have the capacity to process what it meant to be a 7 at the time I first took that test. But a few years later, when I felt more whole, I'd passed a turning point in my healing journey, I could look back and see, yes, I have been spending the last 10 years running from pain. It was only from moving towards that pain that I made true progress in my healing journey. So sometimes I think it's more important to become aware of how we're living and what we need now than finding our correct type. And I think the Enneagram can help with that. Even if it mistypes us, we can take advice from that mistype to support us in our time of stress. But in the long run, when we're using it for development, it does limit us because the advice, the strategies just don't have the same impact as they do. So if you're currently reconsidering your Enneagram type, or if you're looking at it for the first time, consider your current level of stress. Are you going through a major transition? Do you have a health challenge? Is your relationships changing? Is work really stressful? Just pause and just assess on a scale of 1 to 10. What is my level of stress? Is that normal for me? And think back to a time when your life or work wasn't so stressful. How would you rate on your level of stress then? I know there can be a lot of pressure at times to find our type. And when I work with my clients, it's the first thing we do is reassess their type because life has generally been stressful for a while. And so it's good to touch back in with what might be the core motivation driver underneath. But sometimes I think the most compassionate thing we can do with ourselves is to pause our exploration of typing and just work with what's present until life feels a little more spacious, because the Enneagram will always be there whenever you're ready. And stress isn't the only reason we mistype. So check out the other videos in this series to see if there's anything else that might be tripping you up in your exploration or journey with the Enneagram. And if you'd like to hear more about my typing journey, I'll include a link to a podcast below. See you soon.